Hello guys, welcome to another video. Now yesterday I discussed a new Uber boss drop that's coming to Path of Exile in the Necropolis expansion. That was the Ravenous Passion Helmet. And if you missed the news in that regard, they're actually going to be splitting the boss loot tables so that the standard bosses have their own unique drops, and the Uber versions will also have their own drops as well. And as part of that change, they're adding some new uniques to the game to flesh out a lot of those loot tables a little bit more. So today we're going to be discussing another one of those new drops. This time it's the unique gloves, the Celestial Brace, which will drop exclusively from the Searing Exarch. These gloves have a bunch of modifiers which interact with the fortification buff, so let's take a look. 1% increased attack speed per fortification, plus 7 to maximum fortification, and melee hits from strike skills Fortify. I think the plus 1% attack speed per fortification modifier will be static. I doubt there's a roll range on that one, but the plus 7 maximum fortification definitely has a modifier roll range that can be divined. The one shown in the reveal footage had plus 8 to maximum fortification on this modifier, so this could be a 5 to 10 roll, and if it does roll up to 10, that's going to be very powerful. But we do know that at the very least it can go up to 8. So, Fortification is a buff which is applied in single stacks, and by default, each stack of Fortification grants 1% less damage taken from hits and lasts 6 seconds. Fortification has a default maximum stack limit of 20, so with 20 stacks of Fortification, you have 20% less damage taken from hits. Fortification is gained by hitting an enemy with a qualifying melee attack. That's a melee attack that can fortify via a relevant modifier. Some examples of these modifiers include the one on these new gloves, melee hits from strike skills Fortify. There's also the Fortify support gem, which has the modifier melee hits from supported skills Fortify. There's the Fortification Mastery, melee hits Fortify, which also has minus 3 to maximum fortification. And those are just a few examples of modifiers which allow an attack to generate fortification. The amount of generated stacks of fortification from a melee attack is determined by the damage of a hit, the target's ailment threshold, and the monster rarity of the target. The duration of Fortify is 6 seconds by default, but it can be massively increased by fortification duration modifiers on the passive skill tree. For example, the small nodes on the Steadfast and Rampart clusters grant 40% increased fortification duration each, and the Rampart notable itself has 100% increased fortification duration from hits against unique enemies. The Celestial Brace not only provides a way to gain fortification if you're using a strike skill, but it also grants a very large amount of maximum fortification. The max we've seen on this modifier is 8, so this could improve your maximum fortification to 28. Now, if you've been playing Path of Exile for a while, you may remember the period of time around Harvest and Heist League where slam characters using Fortify were very powerful. At the time, Fortify worked a little bit differently. Instead of being a stackable buff, it was a static buff which was simply gained through any qualifying melee hit, even if that hit did little or no damage. The baseline buff lessened hit damage by 20%, but at the time, instead of maximum fortification, there were modifiers to Fortify buff effect, which directly improved the less damage taken modifier. With decent investment, these builds were able to achieve 150% or more increased Fortify effect, so they had 50% less damage taken from hits whenever they had Fortify, which in the case of champion builds was all the time. However, a lot has changed since then, and as part of the nerf to Fortification, GGG took the opportunity when changing the way how Fortify worked to also tone down a lot of those Fortify effect modifiers, and those modifiers are what we now know as maximum fortification. But here's the thing, the change to Fortification happened 8 leagues ago in patch 3.16. And since that change, the sources of maximum fortification in the game have been slowly increasing. Back then, when Fortify was extremely powerful defensively, the state of defenses in Path of Exile was very, very different. We had no spell suppression, Grace and Determination were a lot weaker, we didn't have access to items like the Fourth Vow or Eternal Damnation. And so, what I'm getting at here is that maximum fortification stacking is starting to become a very powerful option once again, with all of the new sources of this modifier that are popping up on new items. And when layered on top of all of the other defensive options we have available to us in current Path of Exile, you're going to end up with a very tanky character. So base maximum fortification is 20, and you can gain a further 6 maximum fortification from the steadfast wheel on the passive skill tree. This comes from 3 small nodes and the notable for a total of 4 points spent. There's also a new unique amulet that was added just last league in 3.23 Affliction, which is an exclusive drop from Heist Blueprints. That's the Replica Badge of the Brotherhood. This amulet makes your maximum endurance charges equal to your maximum frenzy charges, and grants +1 to maximum fortification per endurance charge that you have. Be aware that it also has a chance to cause you to lose endurance charges whenever you gain fortification, so you'll need a good way to maintain endurance charges. Then there's the topic of this video, the new Celestial Brace unique gloves, for at least a possible +8 to maximum fortification, which might even roll up to 10, but for now we'll say it's 8. There are other ways to gain maximum fortification too, which are either a little bit inconsistent or not really worth using. For example, the buff granted by placing Dread Banner grants +10 to maximum fortification, but its duration is based on banner stages and is short even at max stages. There's the Penitent Mask, a ritual exclusive base type which provides maximum fortification, but makes it so you have the Crush debuff, which lowers your physical damage reduction by 15%, and this one's just not worth the trade-off in most cases, but especially since Eldritch implicit modifiers exist, it's not great. An Unveiled modifier on body armor can grant +10 to maximum fortification while focused. This one is actually quite good, but it's competing with a lot of other modifiers on body armors, such as physical damage reduction and spell suppression. And you can also get a lot of maximum fortification from a very good lethal pride jewel, but that's going to be a potential strong endgame upgrade, and it also assumes that you're not already using a different timeless jewel for a specific keystone. So for now, let's just discuss the first few mentioned. With the Steadfast Wheel taken, Replica Badge of the Brotherhood, for this example let's say we have 7 endurance charges, and the new gloves, the Celestial Brace, with a roll of 8 maximum fortification, that brings us to a total of 41 maximum fortification. At max stacks, you'll have 41% less damage taken from all hits. And something we haven't mentioned at all is the scaling attack speed modifier on the gloves as well. That's going to be 41% increased attack speed, which is really nice. Now obviously, if you're using the Replica Badge of the Brotherhood, the likelihood of having more than 7 endurance charges is quite high, I think, because you'll be wanting to leverage the mechanics of the item in your build. But I wanted to provide a fairly modest example just to showcase the potential for stacking maximum fortification. Do keep in mind that you don't need to use a strike skill with the new Celestial Brace unique gloves. You'll still benefit from the other modifiers on the item even if you use a non-strike skill such as a slam, but you will need to generate fortification a different way, such as using the fortification support. Overall though, I think stacking maximum fortification is going to be a very powerful defensive mechanic, and even though the function of the way fortification works in the game now compared to how it used to work is worse, I think the other defensive mechanics that we have access to in the current game make this quite a valuable option once again. Shout out to my patrons, thank you for your support. If you'd like to join them and support the growth of this channel, you can by heading over to the new Patreon that I've set up. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.